Welcome to the videos for HS 314 and the segment on planning for the business owner. Today I brought in a practitioner, and we're really grateful to have Albert E. Gibbons, president of AEG Financial. Al is a CLU, CHFC, AEP, member of the Estate Planning Hall of Fame, and life member of the $1 Million Roundtable and member of the Top of the Table. And today I wanted to have Al talk because I know Al focuses a lot on working with other advisors and the ethics of doing a plan properly, working together, and getting the right thing done for the client. So for today, I'd like to talk about the Ned Saunders case study. A lot of competing interests here. You have a blended family, you've got active children, you've got inactive children, you've got a business owner who's not old, certainly not by our standards, but he's a 60-year-old man, high net worth, facing an estate tax problem, all the kinds of things we like to work with. But he's got key employees that the business can't afford to lose. He's got capital investors who still have a stake. And when you look at all the possibilities to solve the problem with the key employees, to solve the business problems, to solve the business succession problems, to solve the estate planning problems, and manage this in a manner that we can have success for Ned and hopefully keep everyone else satisfied. Al, what do you see in terms of, you've worked on many cases like this, and you're sitting down and you see solutions, but you also see a team, and tell the viewers how you work with that team.
Ted, it's always great to be with you, so thanks for inviting me. This is an incredible case. You have just about everything in it that you could want to have in it. So what I try to focus on, usually I'm called into cases like this, so there are already some primary advisors who may be working with the client. Maybe they've had some success moving them forward. It appears in this case they haven't had a great deal of success moving them forward. So it seems to me that we really have to look at sort of the art of planning here. We sort of have to look at process, and we really need to focus on what the big problems are and deal with those that are urgent as best we can. I think the most important thing, one of the most important things in the case study is that the client is very young, at 60 years of age, with a young second wife who's 58. And he doesn't appear to be ready to retire. And nobody really knows what his plans are. And perhaps he doesn't know what his plans are. He's got all these stakeholders to satisfy. And my guess is that it's such a massive set of issues that he has to deal with that you just don't deal with any of them. So typically on a situation like this, I probably already know one or two of the other advisors, and that's probably why I've been called in, because they know there'll be some kind of planning and probably some kind of life insurance issues that are involved. But I want to get to know those that I don't know on the team. That's very important. And it's very important that they know that I have credibility, that they know that I know what I'm supposed to know, that I'll do the things that I should do, and that I'll act in the best interest of the client. I mean, those are really big issues. And so sometimes we have to get away from stereotypes, and we have to say, okay, this is who I am, and this is what I do. I think the key focus on the team, the absolute essential item is that all the team members have to be focused on serving the best interest of the client. It's client first. That's a non-negotiable. So I want to know that they're in that frame of mind and that I'm in that frame of mind. Typically, when I get called into this situation, we may be having a meeting, and maybe all the advisors are there. Probably not in this case, because there's going to be so many that are going to have to be involved at one point or another. But maybe the key advisors are around the table with the client. And typically what I like to do is I like to sort of get permission from the client while we're there that we can share important planning information and details so that we're not breaching any kind of confidentiality issues. And I offer to do a summary and talk about working together. And when I do that summary, I'll send out an email. The client's included on that email. And I'll outline sort of the fact pattern that I've heard and what some of the important issues are. And I'll ask the other people to edit or correct or enhance some of the ideas that I've put forward. But in doing that, to make sure they reply to all. Because I think the collaborative effort is the only way this case can be solved appropriately. And when I talk about collaboration, we have a tendency in our industry, and a lot of industries have this, where professionals work in silos and never coordinate. When that happens, planning is subpar. Implementation is almost impossible. So we have to get this spirit together. Someone has to initiate it. Often I might be the one who does that. And everybody buys in. I mean, it's a pretty interesting process. So this case, probably what I would do when I'm called in to sit around the table, one of the important questions that I ask, I'm trying to find out how disturbed is the client? Do we have a problem? Well, certainly by the fact pattern, we think we have a problem. Does the client know we have a problem, and how disturbed is he by the problems that are presented in the fact pattern? So I might say, as we're all sitting around the table, I might say, so tell me, if Ned had died last night in a car accident, what would we be discussing today? And each person, the accountant, the attorney, the investment person, trust officer, all those people are going to have something to say. And I want to know what does the will say? How are assets being distributed? Do we have an issue with the IRS? How many issues do we have with the IRS? What about this company? Who gets it and how and why? And so we go through all those issues. And here's the key, Ted. At the end of that conversation, I might ask the client, so how do you feel about that? Is that what you want to have happen? And normally the answer is, no, that's not what I want to have happen. So to the extent that the client is dissatisfied with his current plan or lack of plan, will really determine how the process moves forward. So that's sort of the setup, I think.
I've always found, and I'm the attorney in a case like this, I've always found it to be very, very annoying to the point of creating bad relationships between the advisors when somebody stays in the silo and they start working on something piecemeal where they have an agenda. And they may have already started to implement something, and I don't find out about it until later. There's no possibility I can work with somebody like that.
That's a really difficult situation. I've been involved in those situations. I must say it's the exception rather than the rule. I think that most professionals really want to collaborate. They don't know how. They don't know how to get it started. They don't know how to work with the other professionals around the table, or they're not willing to sort of step out and say, let's make sure that we share information, that we're working together collaboratively. And I don't know how you can deal with this case without that. So because each of the professionals is going to have his take. The attorney's going to have his, the accountant's going to have his. We have income tax issues, we have entity issues, we have IRS estate tax issues, we have all those issues. So then I think, now how do you move forward from there?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You're at a point now where if you've had that meeting, and I love the description of what would happen if you weren't here tomorrow, because I actually have that in the case study.
Yeah, I saw that.
But having the advisors all say from their point of view what happens it's an approach that's a little bit unique to me, because I have not been in a meeting like that and seen it work the way you have. There's so many issues here, There's so many problems. You're not going to solve any of them in 60 days. You're not going to solve many of them for 5 years.
Right.
So where do you think people should focus, and what should be their immediate goal here?
So, you know, when I looked at the fact pattern, we have to find out the biggest, most important assets. I mean, you know, I sort of created the 80-20 estate plan, how to do 80% of estate planning in 20% of the time that's normally required. And it's about dealing with big issues. And I also believe that estate planning or business planning is evolutionary. And it certainly is true in this case because we have a 60-year-old, right, who is still really involved in the business. So there are 3 key elements, I think, to moving this process forward. Number one, it's giving the client, after we've gone through these massive problems that he faces, you know, probably he's discouraged. He's ready to throw up his hands. And I think that's what bothers me in the planning process when other advisors, or perhaps myself if I've overlooked it, are not empathetic enough with what the client's going through. That, you know, that's sort of the art, the feel of how to get a client over some of these issues and dealing with them and understanding that's evolutionary. So the first key element is to make sure that the client understands we're not going to solve all these problems today. We're not going to have a 100% plan. And we couldn't if we wanted to, because we'd have to know things that we really can't know. When he's going to die, what his assets are worth, what the business is worth, what's happening with the kids and their marriages and grandchildren, you know, all the stuff that goes on. So we're not going to have a 100% plan. But if we do 80%, if we can get 80%, 70, 80% done today, haven't we made huge progress? So I think that's really a key element, to give a client permission to move forward and manage those expectations. The second thing, the second key element is one of empowerment, I think. It's not talking in technical jargon. It's dealing with issues in real language, with real emotions, with real understanding, with real empathy, and putting that client in a position where he can make really good decisions for himself and for his family, and for his employees in this case. So it's making sure that he understands, because look, a lot of people say, well, the guy procrastinates, he can't make a decision to save his life and all this other stuff. That's not true. Most of the clients that I deal with are very successful. This guy has been very successful in the course of his life. He has to make decisions every single day, and he can make a decision, he can make decisions in this situation, the planning situation, if he understands, if he's empowered, he can decide, and we can get through the process. And the third key element, I think, when we're dealing with this massive fact pattern, is really to say to the client, how long do you want this process to take? Because this isn't his first rodeo, Ted. This isn't the first time people have told him he has to do planning, and nothing ever gets done. How long do you want this process to take? And no client has ever told me, I'd like it to take 2 years. You know, they don't want it to take a year, they don't want it to take 6 months. We have great personalities and we're really fun to be with, but they don't want to spend all their time with us. So those are the 3 key elements in doing it. As I look at the fact pattern, for example, the company is a huge issue, right? And if we had died last night, we know we have some estate taxes. We know his wife is or isn't taken care of. We know that the other 2 children are not equalized in this process. We know that there are a lot of issues going on. Probably what I would do in this case, 'cause I don't think the guy's ready to make many decisions. So probably what I'd be recommending is we have to think about what's going to happen with the business. And maybe today he has some understanding. If he had died last night, who would he have wanted to get to? Probably his son, although maybe he's not ready to do that today, correct? Mm-hmm. But maybe we can put in some term insurance, do some buy-sell planning. We can always change that in the future. If we need to equalize the other kids, I don't mind doing some term insurance. Let's get something in place. let's protect his insurability, let's make sure we have some convertibility, and then we can sort of work through it. But we can put some Band-Aids on some stuff that will already tremendously improve what he has. And I think that's a way to make progress. And then we revisit. And each time we revisit, the client has a little bit more confidence. He sees a little bit more progress. He's motivated a little bit more to take the next step.
Al, thank you very much for providing us with your insight. I think this has been a great instructive piece without getting into the technical side of the case. And our students and our audience really appreciate you coming here and helping us out today. And thanks again, and always a pleasure to be with you.
My pleasure, Ted. Thanks.